Hello and welcome to another edition of Another Book Review. This week I'll be reviewing Barry Werth's nonfiction work, The $1 Billion Molecule. I'll talk real briefly about the author, give an overview of what the book is about, talk about what I liked about it, what I didn't like about it, who I'd recommend the book to, and finish off with what I will be reading for next time. Barry Werth, the author, is a journalist. He teaches journalism now, I believe, at a series of different schools in the Northeast. He writes primarily about things that are on the intersection of business and medicine. Along with this book, The $1 Billion Molecule, he also wrote a book called Damages, which is about lawsuits and malpractice for medical malpractice, which I haven't read but sounds actually really interesting. This book, The $1 Billion Molecule, is about the startup of a company called Vertex. Years ago, I worked for them through a staff agency for a series of years, so I know a little bit about this company firsthand, nowhere on the level of detail that this is, but what Vertex is they are a pharmaceutical company that started up in the late 80s, early 90s by a man named Joshua Boger. He was formerly with Merck, and he started up this company, and the book is really about the first 3 or 4 years of the company, the decisions that he makes, the process by which the scientists begin working on what they hope to be someday drugs for immunosuppressants, and HIV/AIDS are the two drug targets that this book goes over, and it's really about all those things. So it's about really the ethics behind drug companies, the difference between research scientists and academic scientists, the difference in the business side of things versus the science side of things, the difficulty of being a startup company, kind of all those things kind of come together and make the book what it is. I felt that if you ever want to get really from the ground floor of a company and understand what goes involved in a startup culture, I think this book was a pretty good introduction of that. The things that I liked about it, the thing that was kind of most noticeable to me, I'm someone who doesn't have a scientific background. The last science course I took was a college course while I was in high school, organic chemistry, and I haven't really done anything in the sciences since then. And I think Barry Werth does a really good job of breaking down and explaining things on layman's terms that you can still understand, even though these concepts are relatively complex and confusing to the layperson. I think he does a good job of explaining the science to where you can understand it. I think he does a good job of one of the things that business books do a lot, I find, is spending a ton of time on the background of the founder. While Joshua Boger is by the main character of this book, they get his background out of the way relatively quickly, and it's not really focused so much on his background as it is the company that he founded and kind of the stories involved in the founding of the company. And you get background from what the company is doing. You also get the background of the history of pharmaceuticals really from the Second World War onward. You get background on immunosuppressants and a doctor in Pittsburgh whose name I believe is Stalls, who is a leader in transplants. He kind of pioneered the use of this. It's either I guess it's officially a compound called FK506, and the goal of the Vertex group is to try to find a better version of FK506 that has fewer side effects, and that's kind of the first goal of the company, is to begin researching that and getting on track to making a drug that someday someone will be able to take to achieve those effects. And you realize pretty quickly of how what's the word I'm looking for? Futile is maybe too strong of a word, but how unlikely it is for any one molecule or compound to become a drug from discovery to all the way to get through the kind of grueling process it takes to become like an over-the-counter drug or even a prescribed drug medication. And the book kind of explains that. And so it does a good job of sprinkling in history. It doesn't lay it on too thick. I think the author is very fair to all the players involved. It spends a lot of time with really each member of Boger's scientific team as he founds the company, and he kind of gets into the power plays and the struggles and all those things, I think, in a really interesting way. I think there are a lot of characters, and I found myself a little confused about who exactly was who at times, so I think the book could have probably used a glossary to just a brief character description of who the characters were at times that I thought it was lacking. I think it also The book on the cover gets blurb, kind of compares it to Barbarians at the Gate, which I also reviewed for the channel. I'll leave a link in the video below, the comment section below if you want to check that out, because it's also a business book in a similar vein. I think that book benefited from a very strong through line to where there was something of a race and there was kind of excitement brewing and you kind of saw all the twists and turns. There are some of those in this book. I just didn't find them as impactful because the book, because drug research takes years and years and years and years, if ever it becomes fruitful, you don't really get the full impact of something that felt as concrete as it did in Barbarians at the Gate. So that's kind of where this book kind of falls down, in my opinion. There's a little bit of that. It just wasn't maybe as interesting. There's a race to be published at some point in the book, even though I felt that that kind of race was ultimately kind of anticlimactic. It also takes up a fairly decent-sized portion as far as page count that I think could have probably been trimmed down. So the kind of the race aspect that you have in Barbarians at the Gate is kind of missing from this. But overall, I enjoyed it. It was interesting just to get really the real-life examples of drug research and the understanding of this industry. And I think this is actually a really good way to do that because I think it is well written from a scientific perspective. The more science background you have, I think the easier it will be to get into. But I think you can come into it pretty clean from all that and still kind of get a good, compelling understanding of exactly how the drug industry works and the amount of effort it takes to really get a bunch of very, very intelligent people who may all have conflicting viewpoints of things to work together. And so I think the book for that reason is worth checking out. So that is The $1 Billion Molecule. If you are someone who likes Barbarian at the Gate, I think you'd like it. If you are someone who wants to get a little bit more of a scientific background, I think that you would like it. I think at some point I'll probably read his sequel, The Antidote, which is the sequel that focuses on the same company, Vertex, but 20 years into the future. So that'll be cool. There's a smidgen of the IPO of Vertex, so if that's something that you're interested in and how an IPO is valued and all that stuff, you can kind of check it out and kind of see how that kind of sausage-making process is. So it's a good mixture of scientific research as well as business research, so if that sounds like something in your wheelhouse, I definitely would check it out. And next time I'll be reading kind of the Ursula K. Le Guin classic, The Lathe of Heaven. So until next time, please feel free to like the video, subscribe to the channel, follow me on Twitter, and like I said, I'll have the link to Barbarians at the Gate below, so if that's something you're interested in, you can check it out. Until next time, bye.